starting to take shape at the shipyard in Papenburg in northern Germany. The basic hull structure is complete and the business of outfitting can begin. Again, the team has the benefit of a virtual reality video to guide them as to what the final result should look like. This is the mini atrium section of the ship with its 24-hour restaurant, the first one ever on a P&O ship. The Curtain Theatre is state-of-the-art and has 660 seats, each of which is fitted with its own flow of air conditioning. The stage stretches 24 meters across with a 10-meter wide proscenium arch. It has 4 separate orchestra pit lifts plus 2 revolving stage rails. The Orangery is the ship's self-service restaurant. It can seat 400 passengers and can also be used as a dance bar at night. For passengers, the focal point of the ship will be the atrium. 4 decks high, it has at its centre a 10.5 metre high relief statue and waterfall. There's more water in the ship's 3 swimming pools. Every day, the ship's desalination and cleaning plant will freshen 1,200 tons of seawater into water clean enough to drink. 40% of the cabins have been designed to have private balconies, more than any other ship that sails regularly out of Britain. The ultimate luxury, though, for those that can afford it, are the 2-deck penthouse suites.
At the very top end, we've introduced 2 penthouse suites, which I have to say derive from the fact that we had some spaces right at the very front of the ship about which we were scratching our heads how to use, and we realised that the shapes available were absolutely ideal for putting in 2-story cabins, which became our penthouse suites. And we're using the double height in very dramatic ways. I think clearly having the very high ceiling and the balconied sleeping area gives a very nice effect internally. And then we have a 2-deck high window facing forward, which give a great deal of light and also quite fascinating and dramatic views out to sea, or indeed in port if that's where the ship happens to be at the time.
Unlike most cruise liners, the public decks are to be covered in teak.
We were asked from the beginning because to have this teak decks on board, because P&O is very traditional. The difference what we can find here between Aurora and Oriana is again that we have done developments in between, so we have minimized in part the thickness of the teak deck, let's say to minimize the amount of teak. So the square meters which we have used from Oriana and Aurora, they are nearly the same, but the amount of wood is smaller because we have minimized the thickness with a special system which we have developed here on our shipyard.
Most of the passengers who use Aurora will be British or European, so it's not just teak that's important, but the amount of open deck space as well. The British in particular like plenty of walking room on a ship, to be out in the elements. The only deck areas not teak are the pool sides, which are covered in what's known as bollet. A sort of glue is spread and then covered with tiny gravel particles. The surface is then sealed. One thing that never ever stops on a ship, even after it's finished, is painting. But this is probably the most exciting coat, the first coat. It converts a red-brown hull into something that looks worthy of taking to the high seas. Over 250,000 litres of white paint is used just to cover the basic hull structure, enough to paint the average family's sitting room 50,000 times. Most of the paint used for Aurora comes from International Coatings Akzo Nobel of Gateshead in northern England. They've been making specialist paints for about 100 years, and the business began almost by accident when people started mixing together paint formulas for the shipbuilding industry and thus specializing in marine coatings.
For Aurora, we will supply in total approximately 250,000 litres, and that will satisfy about 90% of the total requirement of coatings for the hull. The specification that we're now using on Aurora is largely based on the materials that we supplied for Oriana, except in the intervening time, we've made certain technical advances, so there's been progress made. The coatings that were used on the external of the hull, for example, have been modified slightly to give us a better gloss. The mechanism by which these types of coating work are by way of a polishing mechanism to release biocide to prevent marine growth on the hull. And our objective now is to try and produce biocides which have little or no effect on the environment. And this has given us an opportunity to introduce biocides which are, for example, used in anti-dandruff shampoos, I feel like, that are now used in paint formulations that will work as anti-foulings on ship's hull, but have little or no effect on the environment. The anti-corrosives that will be used on the inside of the Aurora will be supplied in two components that will be mixed just before the application takes place, and they contain an absolute minimum of solvent. This is to reduce the effect the application has on the environment, typically, and to just reduce the waste. So like 93% of the material that's applied will actually be retained in the dry film. So it's somewhat different from the type of material that people will buy in B&Q and apply on the garden gate.
You might not be able to get the paint at your local DIY store, but when it comes to buying fabrics for the ships, it gets closer to home. But not that close. Again, the sheer scale and the number of people who'll be walking on carpets, sitting on chairs and sleeping on beds has to be taken into account by Alison Clixby and the other designers.
In the font, it's basically white with metallic threads in it.
But none of these are right.
No. No, it is a very specialised piece.
So we'll find that.
It's not only the look and the feel and what it's going to mean to the customer which matters. You also have to consider some very practical issues, such as the durability of the materials which are being used, the degree to which you need to oversupply these items so that you can make subsequent repairs in the case of normal wear and tear, which is inevitable with that many people passing through a ship.
The English company of Brinton's, based in Kidderminster, Worcestershire, has supplied the carpets for some 400 ships over the last 10 years. For Aurora, they're making enough carpet to cover 6.5 football pitches.
Well, the total order on the Aurora is 50,000 square metres, and so it's the largest single ship that we've ever carpeted. There were 4 different design firms who were appointed to do the design work for the carpet, and our designers work closely with them to ensure that we get exactly the right effect. Well, this one behind us is going in one of the main staircases, and this one's on a colonial theme. There's also a wonderful black and gold Art Deco one for one of the other staircases. Ships are very complex. There are lots of different areas and they have to each be planned very carefully to ensure that exactly the right carpet is in place in each area. The sizes of the different deck levels all vary and so on, and so nothing is the same. It is complex and it needs very meticulous work to ensure that the right product is made.
Elsewhere in Britain, in the northern English steel town of Sheffield, they're making the cutlery for Aurora. Elkingtons are supplying approximately 5,000 pieces for the ship. It's a mix of stainless steel and silver plate. For such a high-tech ship, It seems bizarre that essentials such as knives, forks and spoons are made in more or less the same way as they were at the time of the Industrial Revolution.
The silver plating process was invented by George and Henry Elkington, and they were granted the first patent in 1840. The company immediately began making high-quality silver tableware, silver-plated tableware and cutlery for the various hotels around the world, and immediately got into cruise lines. Records show at the Maritime Museum in Greenwich that our silverware was used by all the major cruise lines, and more recently P&O have taken our silverware for Victoria, Canberra, Arcadia, Oriana, and now of course Aurora. The pattern selected by P&O for Aurora is a Dubarry pattern, which is a design which is over 200 years old, probably 250 years old, influenced by Chippendale and named after one of Louis XVI's mistresses, Countess Dubarry. Elkington is making all the stainless steel and silver-plated tableware for Aurora. That includes the crew cutlery as well, and items for the accommodation as well as the restaurant areas.
Another English town, Stoke-on-Trent, is the location of Steelite, the company that's landed the contract to provide the ship's crockery.
We're actually supplying, I would say, 95% of the vessel, of which 75% of that will be the special sunburst design, which we actually commissioned for P&O. The other 15% that we're actually doing for the vessel is for the Orangery restaurant, which is a special colour design that we've commissioned here in-house, and we actually designed that to complement the new table designs that they've actually got involved in the Orangery restaurant. The most important factor is wear and tear. We here at Steelite know that if our product is going to be given a fair trial, then we would trial it on any cruise ship because the wear and tear factor is immense.
And from low-tech to high-tech. Using computer simulations, Captain Steve Burgoyne gets a chance to take Aurora in and out of some of the ports the ship will be using, even before she leaves the shipyard.
Right, now the thing is now we're turning to port and the wind should start to take a bit of effect like it did last time.
The wind should catch the port.
It'll be interesting to see how much it does push it. So I would with the speed down to 1.5 knots, I'd fully expect it now to get a good rate of turn, which it is. It's increasing. Well, we're coming to this course here with BMT to take the ship through its paces driving-wise. They've produced this computer program feeding into it all the things of the ship, in other words the structure of the ship and how it's expected to act, the power it's got, the thruster capability and everything else. And by utilising that with the control panel, we can actually drive the ship into some of the harbours we're going to visit. We can add things like wind, current and everything else, so we can get a good idea of how the ship is going to handle when we get to these ports ahead of time, which is quite beneficial really. These systems are now portable. We can put them on the ships and the junior officers can practice on board the ship in handling any ship. And we've got it on Oriana, Victoria, Grand Princess, and we will have a set up on Aurora as well.
In the German shipyard, Aurora's hull has now been completely painted. At last, she looks like an ocean-going vessel. The engines, which have been sitting idle since they were first delivered and fitted months ago, are fired up, watched over anxiously by engineers from their manufacturers, MAN, B&W.
MAN have been on site from the first day that the first engine has actually been fired up, and so they have been here since early October doing their pre-checks and they're from the firing up. But of course the engines have always been tested on the test bed at the builders, so they know and they are shipped in their entirety after they've been on the test bed, so they know they do work to a certain extent, but obviously in the ship is a different matter.
The prop shafts are run, but not too fast, as the propellers still have to be fitted. Everything is checked and double-checked. Memories of initial vibration problems on sister ship Aurora are still recent in the memory. No one wants to repeat the experience. The propellers have been delivered from the ABB factory in Poland. They'll drive the ship at speeds of up to 24 knots, and in its first year, Aurora will sail 83,000 nautical miles, the equivalent of 4 complete circumnavigations of the globe.
Many years ago, propellers used to be fitted with a key and a keyway to transmit the torque from the propeller shaft into the propeller. And these keyways gave endless problems because they were a stress raiser within the shaft, and you used to get cracks in the propeller shaft, and then the propeller shafts would have to be condemned and replaced with new ones, which was obviously a considerable expense. Now the torque from the propeller shaft to the propeller is transmitted entirely by friction. There is no key between the shaft and the propeller. But obviously, to transmit that torque by friction, you need a tight fit between the propeller and the propeller shaft. And so you have to push the propeller up the propeller shaft taper with a hydraulic jack. And it's very critical to measure the distance the propeller goes up the propeller shaft taper to make sure that it's the correct fit on the shaft, because if you push it too far up the taper, you can overstress the propeller hub and damage it. If you don't press it far enough up, there won't be enough friction between the shaft and the propeller, and of course the propeller may then eventually slip on the shaft, which would be a disaster.
And disaster is not a word that the men and women of P&O want anywhere near their new superliner. Pace is hotting up on the construction of the new P&O superliner Aurora. The finishing touches are being made to the ship's funnel.
Every ship owner has his own idea about his funnel. So this is an emblem sometimes which creates more problem than you could expect. Especially this funnel we have had several times in the wind tunnel test to be sure that we will not get any current from exhaust gases into the ship back in the air-conditioned suction lines and so on. So this you have to consider that also from all the wind directions you have to make sure that you will not get any smoke back into the ship.
Despite its appearance, a funnel isn't just a hollowed chimney. It's as complicated a piece of machinery as many other parts of the ship.
Inside the funnel we have all the exhaust gases of the engines, as well as those one of the incinerators and boiler, and also the vent pipes which you will have from sewage plants and so on. So all the bad odor we are bringing up to the top of the vessel to make sure that we got no backflow.
Sliced through, the funnel looks a bit like a Swiss cheese. Another bit of heavy plant that's almost ready is the chain and anchor. Aurora stands 62 meters tall, 10 meters higher than Niagara Falls. It's a big ship and needs a great deal of heavy chain.
When you anchor the ship, it's probably the chain that does more of the work in holding the ship in position than the anchor. So the longer and the heavier the chain you can have, the better the anchoring of the ship is. But of course there's a trade-off between the weight and the space you need for the anchor and the amount of chain and the weight of chain that you would like to have. And our nautical experts within the new building department, that's something they consider in every ship design, and they try and optimize the weight and the length of the chain to give the best anchoring performance whilst avoiding too much weight and space inside the ship.
At last, the dock in which the ship has been built is being fully flooded in preparation for the ship to be moved out of the yard. For the captain, it's an emotional moment.
Today is a very big landmark in this ship coming out. I was last here in September, and to come back today and see the leaps and bounds that have been made to the ship is colossal, you know, really looking fantastic now. And to see it move out, sort of bring a bit of a lump there, you know, that's my ship coming out, so I'm looking forward to that.
With its funnel fitted, the ship is moved out into the open dock in preparation for the 45-kilometre journey down to the sea. The yard is hitting the deadline, so far. But despite the placid outward appearance of the ship, there are literally hundreds of people on board, working furiously on everything from the air conditioning through the electricity supplies to laying carpets. The yard have cut the planned construction period down from Oriana's 24 months to 15 months. Now, they only have around 4 months left before they have to hand over the ship to P&O. And things are looking tight. The question is, will they make the deadline? P&O's new 76,000-ton superliner Aurora is moored in the dock at the Meyerwerf shipyard in Papenburg, northern Germany. From the outside, she looks finished, but is far from it.
Inside, the final outfitting are continuing, but we really try to have outside everything ready. The painting, the lamps, the surface, the decks, and so on, to be really independent from the weather, from the wind, from at least also from the water. And I'm very happy that we always, that is the advantage of this hall, that we could build up the sensitive parts inside of the hall.
But Aurora's had to move out of the covered construction hall to make way for the next ship being built there. On board, the outfitting of the interior rooms carries on at a faster pace. There's a great deal to be done, and the ship is due to be handed over to P&O in just 3 months. In the huge atrium that spans 4 deck levels, John Mill's sculpture is being positioned. Once fitted, a waterfall will be created that'll cascade down the 10-metre figure. Meanwhile, elsewhere in Germany, in Bern-Motzen, the ship's tenders and lifeboats are being made and tested. The Fasma shipyard has its own dock area in which to carry out tests. Inside one of the construction halls, the lifeboats and tenders being built for P&O are lined up like a mini armada.
Of course, P&O is one of our most important customers. We have been building tender boats for P&O for more than, I think, 5 cruise vessels so far, with catamaran tender boats. On a cruise ship, it is very important to keep the main dimensions of the boat as small as possible, because the owner of the passenger vessel, he does not really want to have a big lifeboat, but he would like to have a nice cabin with an unrestricted view on the sea. That's why we are always trying to reduce the total length of a lifeboat. But when you're reducing the length, somewhere you have to increase the width. And with a vessel that has a small length and a wider width, with a catamaran you receive better behavior, better sea keeping. We use glass fiber mats, glass fiber layers, and those glass fiber layers are being penetrated with a special resin. This resin becomes hard, and so you bring in more and more layers till you have reached a thickness according to the drawings and according to the design. And then you can take out the hull out of the negative mold, and you can start with the outfitting of the boat.
Fassmers are building 4 passenger tenders, 2 crew tenders and 8 of the lifeboats. Safety is obviously a priority, and continual checks are made on each and every part of the lifeboat. And these checks are not just carried out by staff at the firm itself, but also by third parties.
We are testing lifeboat hooks before they are installed into the lifeboats. The hook will take the load from the davits. So we are simulating the same condition that we are finding on board, just to see if the manufacturing of the hooks are correct and without fault. We are testing way beyond the maximum load that these hooks will ever experience, to be on the safe side.
The safety authorities and safety institutions, they are requiring, when you offer a new type of lifeboat, you have to make certain tests to prove that your lifeboat will withstand every situation almost. And they make funny things. They just drop the lifeboat from a height of 3 meters into the water. They slash a lifeboat against the wall. So they try to simulate everything which could happen in the worst case on a passenger vessel. And you can really say, if your lifeboat has withstand this type of approvals, it will be okay for everything which might come up later on.
Matthias is just one of nearly 5,000 people who work for Lloyd's Register in over 135 countries. On behalf of national governments, they classify and verify that ships meet safety, quality and environmental requirements. Today, he's testing one of the catamarans that's been built for Aurora. It'll be used mainly as a tender to carry passengers to and fro in those ports which have docksides that are too small for Aurora to moor in.
Okay.
As they're amongst the last things to be delivered, the completion of the lifeboats and the tenders is one sure sign that the deadline for Aurora to be finished and delivered to P&O is rapidly. Finishing off the interiors of P&O's new superliner Aurora is going ahead at a hectic pace at the Maerwerf shipyard in northern Germany. Time is running short. It's a huge task. Apart from all the public rooms, cabins for up to 1,874 passengers have to be fully outfitted with beds, wardrobes, paintings, even television sets. In Hamburg, just a few hours away from the Papenburg shipyard by road, engineers at STN Atlas have been working on screens of a different sort. Radar and computer screens. Gone are the days when the captain in the bridge used to stand at the helm, holler instructions down a tube to dozens of oil-covered engineers in the bowels of the ship. Electronics have taken over.
In system technology, you do not see the high-tech elements of a system just by glancing at it. But one example is this little steering control. With this control, we control the complete vessel, or actually the officer does. He controls the speed of the ship, he controls the radius of turn of the ship, and also the rudder, all with one little joystick.
It may be one little joystick, but it's connected to more than one little wire. This is Aurora's bridge, or it will be when everyone works out what goes where and connects to what. Outside, work carries on as well. This is the last bit of heavy plant to be fitted onto Aurora, and one of the most innovative. It's called a sky dome, and its purpose is to cover one of the swimming pools so that it can be used by passengers in bad weather as well as good. Although made of aluminium in order to keep weight to a minimum, it still comes in at 40 tons.
We have used 2 cranes, and with the 2 cranes we have moved the whole section together on top of deck 13. We are nearly 45 meters on top of the waterline. It was really a nightmare, I can say, for the crane drivers to bring it exact in position, because you were talking about centimeters here. And as I said before, the sliding cover is 20 by 20 meter opening. So it's a big unit, and we are talking about more than 40 tons.
The sky dome is fitted over the ship's crystal pool and is designed to be able to retract in under 5 minutes when weather is good. Aurora is nearly ready to leave Papenburg. To lighten the load and make the draft as shallow as possible whilst going the 45 kilometers downriver to the sea, the lifeboats are taken off. The problem the Mayer-Werft yard faces is that ships are getting bigger and bigger.
The number of ships which will be built are growing, and the size is growing. And if we are not following this trend, we are out. Very simple. So we are forced to do something, to optimize our production, to increase our production, but also to have the possibility to build bigger ships.
Despite objections from environmentalists and local fishermen, the River Ems has been dredged for years. Now Mayer-Werft want a barrier to be built that would raise the river level whenever a ship had to get from the yard to the sea. After a short but fairly bitter fight, Mayer-Werft won the argument. The Prime Minister of Lower Saxony, Gerhard Klaukowski, arrives at the yard in a blaze of publicity to announce that the barrier will go ahead. Locally, it's a popular decision. Virtually everyone in Papenburg relies on the yard, directly or indirectly, for their living.
He was supporting us, and of course the problem was that there was a clear yes to this project from all big political parties.
But not from everyone. The Worldwide Fund for Nature claims the barrier is like dredging, only a short-term solution. They fear for the future of wildlife in the area.
I think the Ems barrier is not the solution for the shipyard and not for the nature. To realization such economic interests at the expense of the nature is not in agreement with the sustainable development. I think there will come the next generation of cruises who need even deeper water, and then the Ems barrier is not enough for the shipyard.
For Aurora, the sun is setting on her last day at the yard. Mooring ropes are cast off and the engines tick over gently. The ship is about to say farewell to Papenburg. In the crow's nest at the bow of the ship, company guests, in effect the first passengers, gather for the journey along the river. Just before 11 a.m., when the tide was right, she started out slowly. An estimated 100,000 people lined the riverbanks to see her on her way. and none was prouder than Mayor Verf's managing director.
I will be very proud that this 2,000 workers, employees, engineers of the Meyer shipyard, plus all the subcontractors who worked on it, and I'm sure that thousands are on the dike again, workers, but also third parties, but also our workers with their families, saying that's part of life.
Apart from the crowds there, many others joined in on the internet. Mayor Verf set up 2 cameras to follow the ship's progress, and the site received more than 10,000 hits during the journey. Back in the real world, progress was slow. The ship was going to travel no faster than 7 kilometers an hour. Although accompanied by 2 tugs, she travelled under her own power. On board, members of the crew were getting their first taste of working their new ship. It's a difficult journey. The river is narrow, and the ship had to squeeze past one railway bridge with just 4 meters to spare on either side. The bridge even had to be dismantled for her to pass. On the bridge, as the ship hasn't formally been handed over to P&O, Mayor Verf staff are still in control. Aurora's now berthed at Eemshaven in Holland. Work's far from over, and here, amongst other things, the life rafts are being tested. These rafts will be used by the passengers, but P&O have also installed on board an innovative new chute system manufactured in Belfast, which for an initial period will be reserved for crew. The chutes are packed in boxes.
In former times, we had simply, in addition to the lifeboats, we had life rafts under crane. And this has changed a little bit with our Aurora, because here we have a slide where the capacity to evacuate people is higher than this craneage. It's a free fall, which inside the cube you have means to slow down your free fall, and you are ending up on a receiving raft, and from there you are distributing the people into other ones. This life raft operation is for the time being for crew only. But if it proves to be reliable, probably this will come as well, that this will be used for passengers as well.
At last, Aurora takes to the high seas. Well, the North Sea at least. Before going into service, it's planned she'll make 2 sea trials. And, although there's an awful lot of water in the North Sea, equipment like the fire hoses have to undergo rigorous checks.
It's very difficult on the sea trials to test everything because, of course, things like the air conditioning in hot weather can only be tested once the ship's in service and enters hot climates, because the sea trials are in February in the North Sea. As you can imagine, it'll be fairly cold. So I think we'll be testing the heating more than the cooling.
Thomas Vitola is what's known as the project manager for Mayer, the shipbuilders. It's his role on the Aurora project to take an overview on behalf of the yard. On the sea trials, they have their own dedicated office, what will become the ship's library.
Of course, you are checking a lot of items which are described in the contract as well. So there are a lot of items which are very, very important, specifically for a passenger ship, like, for example, speed or vibration and sound. This is, beside all the safety issues the classification society is asking for, is one of the major items we have to check and present to the owner.
Now that the ship is way out at sea and nearly at full speed, checks can be made on plant like the prop shafts.
The propeller shafts themselves lie in bushes which are inside the long tubes that the shafts rotated, and there's 3 bushes made of a white metal bearing material. The first thing is to make sure the bushes fit in there, and then they are machined to fit the propeller shaft. And at the end of that process we take a thing called a wear down, which indicates on that's the initial reading, what the propellers sitting in the bearing, and after the first sea trials we're taking a set of readings again to ensure that the wear down is exactly the same as what it was when it was fitted in the building dock, and they are the same.
As Aurora's sister ship Oriana had initial vibration problems at high speed, which were eventually traced to the propellers, Paul Clasby keeps a sharp eye out for any signs of trouble. But so far, so good.
Well, the first sea trial was very successful. It was mainly designed to look after the technical side of things, start lining up main engines and all the auxiliary engines, etc. So from that point of view, it was very successful. It also gave us an insight of how the ship behaves at sea, and from the start it was quite obvious that the ship was very stable and, to my mind, a very comfortable one, which was very pleasing.
And so on to the second sea trials. Aurora's long, slim shape serves 2 purposes. One is that as she'll be operating out of Southampton in southern England, she needs to be fast in order to get holidaymakers into the sun as quickly as possible. So she's tested to the limit.
You carry on to the second one, you start a little more into it, the navigational systems, and we've been lining up the navigational systems on the ship, the finer points, navigation, radars, and all the bridge equipment. Also to continue with other systems in the ship, and we test them to the limit, and we find out where things go wrong.
True to form, the North Sea produced its typical spring weather. Luckily, there are no paying passengers on board. This isn't exactly the fun in the sun that most holidaymakers are looking for on the trip of a lifetime. Even so, the P&O and Mayer staff are glad they're on Aurora with its 2 stabilizers, rather than on a bulk carrier. Inside, work continues on the outfitting. It's the last few hurdles now, although to an outsider it might look as though things are a long, long way off from being finished.
You really have to split in 2 parts. One is really the trial, that means the operation of the technical system, and the other thing is a finalization of the accommodation part, which are completely disconnected from each other. That's why we have this situation. We are doing these technical trials, and in parallel we are continuing the outfitting of the ship. But we are absolutely convinced that it will be possible to finalize cabin areas as well as public room areas in time.
One of the most impressive of the public areas is the 660-seat theatre with its adjustable orchestra pit.
It allows us to raise and lower the orchestra pit in 4 separate sections, and any of the sections can be up, any can be down, any combination of those 4 can be up and down. So this morning we've been testing every single part of the stage elevator system and every part of every safety procedure, and making it do things that it would never ever be asked to do ever again. But if it passes that level of testing, then hopefully we're covered for anything that it may throw at us in the future.
The weather calms down and work resumes on outfitting on the deck areas. Delivery of the ship to P&O is now only weeks away, and although they don't know it at the moment, there'll have to be a 3rd sea trial before then. But for the moment, everything's calm on the surface, not a ripple in sight. Aurora, P&O's new 76,000-ton superliner, is heading for a problem. During the 2nd sea trial, what happens is, in effect, that the equivalent of one of the main controlling fuses on the ship blows, and there's no spare on board, as there would be under normal circumstances. As the discs that warn other ships that Aurora's not under power are raised, the captain puts a commendably brave British face on it.
There was a technical hitch which we have to go back to fix. When we test something, we test it to the limit, as I say, so we've got to make sure that it will do its job, and if not, then we have to go back and change it. So we expect to do another couple of sea trials yet to iron out all the little wrinkles.
The ship's builders also accentuate the positive.
The nature of sea trials is that you are testing things and you always have the chance to just achieve what you have expected to achieve, or you have to correct things, and that means the chance is always 50-50, and that's why you have to be aware that sometimes you have to extend the duration of a trial caused by things which are not running first time as you want them to.
In many ways, this is what a sea trial is designed to do. If things are going to go wrong, it's better they do so now than when paying passengers are on board. The next big test for the ship, some would say bigger, is a visit by P&O's chairman, Lord Stirling.
This is a lovely wide promenade deck, isn't it? It's great. And what's the walk around, Jim?
Well, 4 times round will be a mile.
Same as Canberra?
No, it's just three and
well,
a third
Canberra was 4. All right.
I've got metric feet.
Perhaps if we just up here first, maybe. David.
One couldn't. There's no way of like having the main table down there, is there?
Well, according to her, you wanted to be somewhere that they could see you, okay?
Well, I like to think through, have it over here, and particularly the night when the Princess Royal is coming.
Yeah.
Some people, if you're over that part, are going to have the back to other people, which is sort of not attractive. Whereas if you are down here, you see what everybody's seeing, at least when you stand.
Yeah.
And if the Princess Royal had a back to the windows, you could say that it could be seen by everybody.
At the end there.
Who dreamed up that design?
Slot there.
Well, I see, right.
Egyptian theme for the restaurant. Hieroglyphics on the
Egyptian theme. You couldn't unless if you do it like this, you've got nothing against your back either. If we're sitting, you face me. You see where your feet are. How could anybody else sit there?
Oh, no. Yeah, that's right.
You'd have to sit around, wouldn't it?
Not in my view. Anna, you try it. All right. Let her have a go. Let us sit in the middle and see what it feels.
You need to be very know the people very well. You wouldn't sit down strangers.
Well, you can hardly reach the ground. No, that's a good start. I think you better have a think about that, if I may suggest, gentlemen. I think this is wasted. If you want to give the first atmosphere coming into Anderson what it all represents, you should have one of our best reproductions of our old ships, etc., coming into whatever it is. I don't think you need I really don't think that's worth having now. Got plenty of mirrors in the cabin. And by the time the women get here, they should look okay.
That's been outside. The Pearl Diver?
Yeah, it's nice, I like it.
And on to one of the main new features, a 2-deck penthouse suite.
That's the bedroom area up there.
Bedroom, bathroom, walk-in wardrobe, separate toilet.
It'll be useful not to have drunk too much.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it'll look very attractive. Have a go.
And then on to the crew areas.
Looks pretty dark in here. Hello? Doesn't look, it looks unpacked.
Okay.
Now these are the ones that have a shared
Toilet
between the two cabins.
What about the ladies?
Well, I mean, they're quite happy.
They're showing.
No, it's ladies on one side and ladies on the other.
No, I know that, but I mean, but again, only one.
Yes.
One facility.
Yes.
Leading hands have got their.
Leading hands have their own shower room, and they also have an upper berth and everything.
Right.
Waiting for the passenger. These are the crew bed sheets.
That's good.
Yeah. Very good.
So the crew get the same facility.
Yes. Yeah.
they're all, you know.
Can you imagine the old days?
These are all the crew doobie covers there.
Good machine. Yep. Good. The technology today is changing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Say, Jim, the technology, has it changed?
Yeah.
Maybe. Hasn't changed. I feel as if I walked 15 miles. No, it's been very interesting, and I think that Bernard Meyer, they build good ships. This is going to be a great ship. I mean, there's always little things you see and you feel, which the customer, you've got to be able to consider those as to change it. But I think that with all the cabins that we have with balconies, the general layout, I think it's going to be a great ship. And I understand its sea holding capability, as far as the captain is concerned, is very satisfying.
Aurora starts to get stocked up. When she sails, she'll need 180 tons of products, 20 tons of which will be purely for the bars. In just 1 year, the passengers will consume 289,488 bottles of lager, 5,880 bottles of gin, and 148,224 cans of tonic water. Around 1,000 plants supplied by the British firm of Rentokil Plants are brought on board. In each case, they tried to fit in with the atmosphere. For instance, outside the Raffles bar, they used Ravenellas, which can be seen growing outside Raffles Hotel in Singapore. Work goes on until the very last minute, not just in the cabins, but also in the public areas, the shops and the restaurants. Aurora is designed to carry a maximum of nearly 2,000 passengers, although the normal number will be around 1,800. It's a floating village, and the public areas have to be designed with that in mind. There'll be 12 bars, including this formal one, Anderson's, and a champagne bar serving caviar. The size is staggering. There'll be 5 lounges, 2 main restaurants, a bistro, a theatre, a cinema, a show lounge, a nightclub, 4 dance floors, a casino, a card room, library, health and beauty spa, business centre, medical centre, and children's area. And that's just on the inside. No wonder then that people like designer Alison Clixby sometimes look a little serious as they go about the task of making sure that things are as they hoped they would be.
We didn't see much of the space till very late on. It was one of the last areas to be finished. We were always sort of anticipating a new look for P&O that had moved on from Oriana. And what we have created is something quite special, I think, for them. And we're quite confident it's going to work for them operationally, but for us as a design team, that it's worked incredibly well. It's really been one of the rooms that has stayed from the initial concept, and that's what you see now. If you were to see the drawings from 2.5 years ago, it's pretty much exactly the same. Some of the details aren't as we want, and if you look very closely, as we tend to do, then there are some things we would have preferred to have been done maybe a little better. I think being British, you tend to see a lot of elaborate curtains and upholstery, and you get used to seeing a certain quality, and it's very difficult to actually achieve that in reality with the complex shapes. I mean, particularly the curve in Carmen's. You've got a curve, the waves of the top of the seats, as well as the sort of enclosing curves that you sit in. It's virtually impossible to build, and so we cause problems in the design side as well as in the manufacture side. We're delighted with our personal work, but also the ship as a whole feels come together quite comprehensively, and it's going to be fantastic for the people using it. Really looking forward to the reviews actually for the first time. It's good.
Works of art like this sculpture are used throughout the ship. The biggest is the 10-metre-high bas-relief made by sculptor John Mills, which dominates the 4-deck-high main atrium. Other, smaller works of art are amongst the last things to go into position. The company, Tempest Radford, has been contracted to buy and commission 3,000 works of art for the ship.
The figure that I've been given to create by P&O is £1 million, which includes everything from the smallest fixing to the biggest artwork. Which it is a lot of money, and it's not a lot of money, but it's a question of what you do with it. As a consultancy, our job is to work with a client to maximise their budget, to make sure that it's applied in the right way throughout the ship. So when we first sit down with P&O, they start talking about, in general terms, about the figures and what they want to achieve. And then we have to look at the spaces and ask what the spaces need, and we have to talk with the architects as well. So we have to split the budget. That's part of our role, is to act as art cost consultants, if you like, and then we project manage it through. So I say it's not a lot of money because £1 million could be the price of one picture at auction, but the actual time input and the energy that goes behind making it work for P&O is what really makes it work on the ship, because we have to think about all the different spaces and what they're trying to achieve. And actually, it's not what you spend on a project like this, it's how you spend it. It's got to be the way that it really works.
Okay, that looks great.
A lot of famous artists, from Hockney to Borden to Sutherland to Henry Moore, who've all worked on P&O ships, and they've all had the same conversations with people who've been organising it, like the consultants in our team, who about the fixings and how to get it right. There are 3 main stairways which drop down next to the lift, which have an artist per stairway, and the number of pictures ranges from I think 13 to 6, and they're all contemporary artists, obviously, because they had to be commissioned to a very specific size. They're all oil paintings, they're all top quality, and they're all very visually stimulating.
One of the many artists that Tom's commissioned lives in this house in Portobello, just outside Edinburgh in Scotland. Jeanette Lasson, who's exhibited at places like the Royal Academy in London and the Scottish Royal Academy, was chosen mainly because of her contemporary interpretations of Art Deco.
They offered me this commission when they saw the photographs, particularly, I think, because I like doing a lot of crazy women with hats on, and they thought it had an Art Deco flavour. Well, its title is Life in the Fast Lane, which I think is rather good because it's got the people at the bottom drinking and obviously having a good time, and then the horses galloping at the top. So, I hope it gives the impression of people having a good time. I was very pleased the other day when a friend came round to see the paintings, and I said, well, of course they're I have no message for the world with my paintings. They're just decorative. And she said, yes, you do. Optimism. And I said, well, I would go with that. I hope that's true, that they are optimistic paintings. And if the passengers of Aurora see them, I hope they will feel that.
I think this project will be a success because our team has worked very hard in finding artists to fill the brief, and they've succeeded. And if they haven't immediately been able to think of someone, they'll keep going. If they can't find someone, they'll keep going, and they will find that person. And there are, I mean, out of the artists that we've commissioned this time around, there are some that we've used before because P&O like their work and they think it's appropriate for the environment, and there are completely new artists. But we don't represent any artists, so we can do that. We go out and we find them. And we keep looking until we find what we want.
Art in another shape is performed by P&O's own in-house theatre group, the Stadium Theatre Company, who now have the brand new theatre to play in. But they're not the only ones that whistle while they work. It's really last-minute stuff now, as crew members like waiters and cabin stewards get issued with uniforms. And why is it that the trousers are always too long? Luckily, the ship has its own tailoring service on board, which comes in terribly handy for passengers when that dinner suit seems to get smaller as the cruise gets longer. Nothing to do with the midnight chocolate buffets that are laid on, of course. There'll be over 800 staff on board, and no one underestimates how crucial to the success of the ship they are.
I think also the most important thing I find when I go around on a ship like this is already the crew is very excited. But when it comes to it, I mean, that's everything. You've got a ship's company who are really raring to go and they want to serve the customers, then you're halfway home in any case. But with those facilities, I think this is going to be a great ship.
The ship Aurora, P&O's new $320 million liner, arrives from Germany at what's to become a home port of Southampton. There are now just a few days left before she sails off on her maiden cruise. But before that, there's the official naming ceremony. And the great and the good gather to wish her well. The ceremony itself is to be performed by the Princess Royal, who's the patron of a marine charity.
Ladies and gentlemen, as most of you know, Her Royal Highness, the Princess Royal, is tireless in her efforts on behalf of many charitable and other activities in this country and abroad. And I couldn't think of anybody better to be the lady sponsor of another great proud ship, flying the Red Ensign, to name this ship today. Your Royal Highness, would you give us the honour?
Thank you, Lord Stirling. I name this ship Aurora. May God bless her and all who sail in her.
Shivers from the superstitious as the champagne bottle failed to break. But the ship looked magnificent, and the incident was quickly forgotten in the glory of the moment.
I think everybody in P&O is going to be very proud when Aurora leaves Southampton for the first time, because that's really what matters. It's not what we internally think of the ship that's important, it's what the passengers think of it. And the biggest thrill that we get is seeing passengers go on board a new ship for the first time and seeing them comment on and appreciate the things that we have put into the ship, the extra special things that we've added. So we will be looking forward to a very positive reaction from everybody on board that ship as it sails down Southampton Water on her maiden cruise.
The public, it seems, agreed with David Dingle, and P&O received over 11,000 inquiries about the maiden voyage in just the first 3 days of bookings being taken.
Everybody went on board and everybody was in high spirits. The ship was lovely, it was beautifully finished out, and we all were looking forward to our maiden cruise with some highlights of fireworks in various ports, etc. However, the next morning we were just coming down the western approaches towards the Bay of Biscay, and I went for a walk round the ship quite early in the morning, and I looked out the stern and I noticed we only had one wash coming from one of the propellers. It was deemed later on that a thrust bearing had gone during the course of the evening sail. When a ship's tested, it's tested all they can, but they can never test it with a full load of passengers, crew, stores, luggage, etc. Anyway, we got a full refund, a free cruise we took the following year, and a free bar all the way home. So all was not lost, and P&O did the right thing. Appreciate you all watching. I know this was a long last episode, but it was difficult to do a cut. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so for some more great videos. Thanks for watching.